The night wore a blue made of memory and stone, filling the canyon with a hush that was not silence so much as listening. Above the terrace where the wind chimes hung, the first constellation slid west like a slow ship. On the ridge, a woman in a dark jacket and scuffed boots knelt to ready the braid that kept her hair from bothering her eyes when she worked. Tara Rahman's hands were scarred in the ordinary ways: rope burn, small cuts, the shine of healed blister, and they moved with the unhurried certainty of someone who had learned that speed is not the same as strength. She wasn't alone. A shape the size of a large cat and the weight of a grown human padded out of the shadow, stripes soaking up starlight, eyes lit inside with the faint silver of an ember. The elder, older now, muzzle paled to rain glint, breathed in the smell of Tara's jacket, and then pressed its forehead to hers for a slow count of 2 heartbeats. The old greeting, the old calibration. The light under its skin rose and fell like a lantern pulse. "Hey," Tara whispered, because some words need breath to be real. "I know, we're early." She nodded toward the valley floor where a scaffold of copper rods climbed into the dark like a crooked forest. "If the chimes are going to carry across the river this season, we need to raise a second spine before the storms change their key." The elder hummed. The note matched the crystal veins threaded through the cliffs. The same note that had once woken her in a cave, with 10 striped cubs asleep on her legs, their purrs threading her bones like warm wire. The note that had taught 2 peoples they were not alone. Below, the village, no, the city that hated the word, slept in a loose braid of light. Human domes glowed like nested moons. Open terraces the elders preferred lay in darkness, softened by bioluminescent moss. On the slope in between, a hoopshime grove shivered to life with the night breeze, tuning itself with tinkers and sighs. Somewhere, a child laughed in a dream. Somewhere else, a trooper on night watch leaned against a post and listened to a recording from a mother who had never seen this sky and would, perhaps, forgive it anyway for taking her child. Tara tied off the last knot and stood. The elder stepped in front of her, blocking a patch of loose rock with its body. It had done the same thing the first day they'd walked together in the open. "You will fall there if you step like a human." She touched its shoulder, thanked it without speaking. They walked toward the scaffold. At the base, a cricket silence broke into small metal clinks. "Dr. Rahman," came a voice, careful not to be too loud. "You really weren't kidding about pre-dawn." The voice belonged to Kyan, a young engineer who smiled like an apology and worked like a confession. He had arrived 6 months ago with a duffel of tools, 2 folded wind turbines, and more awe than spare socks. In that time, he'd learned to sleep through storms and to never touch a cub without letting it choose the touch. He had also learned that Tara's pre-dawn meant the dark hour before the world remembers it has a sun. He stood ankle-deep in river mud, hands on the winch. Beside him, 2 elders watched with alert composure, the kind of cliff has when it is deciding whether to keep holding. The winch line ran up and across the scaffold to a segment of tuned rods. When the wind hit, those rods would sing at frequencies that flowed through crystal and bone. The new spine would add harmonics, drawing messages across water and stone fast as thought. "Morning," Tara said. "We'll get the first lift done before the east winds wake." She squinted at the rods. "Did you double the dampers?" Kyan nodded. "Double rubber, triple weave. If the gusts get violent, we'll swing instead of snap." The elder who had brought Tara turned its head, ears forward. It tapped the river stones with 2 short, 1 long, 2 short, the old pattern still the first hello. The other elders answered with a slow cascade that meant good path, good work. Tara repeated it with her knuckles on the winch housing. Kyan, who was still learning, tapped something that made one elder chuff amusement. He grinned sheepishly and tried again. He improved. That was all anyone asked here. They cranked the winch. The rods lifted, heavy and careful, arching toward the night. The elder's light brightened along its flank as if reflecting stress on the line. The river muttered about yesterday's rain, Far off, close to the old rally ridge, something like thunder rolled, too steady for storm, too fat for rockfall. Tara stopped cranking. The elder's ears sharpened. Kyan listened and went pale the way only someone who has never yet been near a real disaster goes pale, like he'd been told the sea has teeth and now could see the water smiling. The sound grew, machines, many, not the envoys, too heavy, not the settlements, wrong pitch. A wash of fans, the whine of overdriven coil generators, a staccato rattle that meant guns compressing into readiness. Back, Tara said softly. Slow. She lowered the rods hand over hand until they rested in their cradle. She did not look like someone who had ever run. She had run too often to waste adrenaline on the false start of panic. Kyan, Wake Malin and Huang, set quiet at the south ridge. I want a pulse down the crystal veins before we see them. Kyan ran. The elders flowed beside Tara, not in front. She was not prey now, she was partnership. They reached the terrace edge overlooking the river mouth. Dust rose beyond the dark hill like an unstrung banner. The first machine crested. A boxy carrier on 6 independent legs, flat deck stacked with ore crates disguised as nothing more than what they were, except that ore crates don't usually come with remote turrets and studs for fast weapon mounts. The mining syndicate had come back. Not polite this time. Practical. They were not alone. Behind the carriers rolled earth movers with deep scoops, and skidders loaded with auto printers, and one high command van glinting blue where its shield generator hated the air. Above all that, drones fanned like metal bats. The convoy moved toward the river flats between city and canyon with the confidence of a bully wearing a charter. The elder at Tara's side made a note that would have split a human ear if sung close. Down at the river, 3 adults turned and headed up the slope at a trot. Farther back in the chime groves, elders hummed warning phrases to cub-sitters and old bones. Lamps blinked awake one by one across the human buildings. Strom lights stayed off. The command channel in Tara's ear clicked and filled with sleep-flattened voices trying not to shake. Visual confirmed, Huang, the militia captain, said. Not envoy, not registered colony hauler. Markings, Sino-Kyber extraction, Division 4. 4 carriers, 6 skidders, 1 command, drones, a lot of drones. They're sprinting the approach, not even bothering with a perimeter. That's either arrogance or a bet. A bet that we're not ready to bleed for a treaty, Malin said from the ridge. The wind took her voice and gave it back thinner, or that the envoy's too far to help. They won't shoot first, Tara said, more hope than certainty. Not the command van. They'll try to set a staging area and claim eminent necessity. If they don't meet hard resistance, they'll lay a printer foundation and spin it as fait accompli. And if they do meet resistance, Huang asked, then they'll call us feral and call the response proportional. Tara exhaled. Hold, no one fires. The elder at her side touched her elbow. Its light rose to her fingers and retreated. It had seen humans weigh this coin before. It tapped the stone with the bracketandering, I am here. Then it added 4 quick touches that meant cubs are safe. Her throat loosened. Good, she whispered, as if the word could bind the world. The convoy reached the flats. The command van projected a halo-pale circle and stopped in its center. A door hissed. A woman in a clean jacket and clean jawline stepped down, hair slicked back like a thought with no time for tangles. An aide, the kind different everywhere and always the same, trailed with a tablet and a gun he didn't know how to use. Drones spread and shone flood-white across river and stone. Look alive, the attaché murmured in Tara's ear. He'd taken the post no one else wanted and made it quiet instead of loud, careful instead of clever. Envoy is burning reaction mass to get here, but they're 2 hours out even with a knee on the law. We've pinged planetary admin. The mining charter they're flying expired last year, but they'll claim renewal through a parent firm. They're gamesmen. They came counting on us to blink. Beneath the words, Tara heard what the attaché didn't say. They also came counting that if we didn't blink, we would burn. The woman in the clean jacket lifted a megaphone because she misunderstood this place down to her bones. "Settlement of HFY," her amplified voice said, bright and brisk, like a tour guide on schedule. "This is Captain Ellison of Sino Khyber Division 4. We're here under authority of Article 16 of the Intercold Accord to establish a temporary ore-gathering operation. Our sensors indicate high-grade crystal veins beneath your southern terraces. We're prepared to compensate fairly and operate safely. We'll need a 10-hectare staging ground and full right-of-way to the canyon mouth. We anticipate 28 hours on site. Please secure your domestic animals and keep your people clear. We'll have the work done before the week's out." Tara felt the elder beside her draw breath. She placed her hand on its shoulder to ask for one beat more. She stepped to the edge of the terrace. She had no megaphone. She had a voice and a stone that carried it the way a spire carries a bell. "We are not under the Intercold Accord," she said evenly. "We are under a treaty signed by Envoy, Colony, and the Ishi themselves. You have no right here." The captain lifted the megaphone toward the ridge, puzzled, annoyed. "Dr. Rahman, thank you for making this easy. I've read your file." She smiled. It never reached the eyes. "Our legal team contends your treaty is internal between a colony and a local species, and cannot supersede the Accord's emergency provisions for resource extraction vital to broader human interests. We have permits filed with 2 interstellar courts and a provisional writ from Administrator Carls." "Provisional doesn't mean legal," the attaché muttered, "and Carls will swear his stamp was forged if this goes wrong." "You can appeal," the captain called cheerfully, "but we'll be packed by the time the court rules. We're just here for a vein or two, Dr. Rahman. No harm. Your neighbors will thank you for lights and medicine. If we meet resistance, we're authorized to defend." The elder beside Tara tapped rock. "We stand." The beat traveled down through stone to the crystal veins, then up again through terraces where elders waited with cubs behind their paws. A ring of luminous backs rose in the dark like a patient tide. Huang spoke, voice tight. "Malin, take second squad and flank north. We'll show them we're awake. Non-lethal, tasers on one. Do not give them footage they can cut into a justification." A breath. "Dr. Rahman, permission to do what needs doing without getting us all killed." Tara looked at the elder. It looked back. The old scar along its muzzle glowed faintly under the skin. Between them ran 2 languages that had learned one another's edges. She nodded. "Permission," she said, "but no one fires first." She lifted her hands low, palms out, the posture of together. Then she did something a younger Tara would have hated herself for. She closed her eyes and remembered being pinned beneath 10 warm bodies until she could not move. She remembered the humility in her muscles, the way the cave had taught her that not all weight is a wound. She opened her eyes and let that memory stand behind her words like a mountain. "Captain Ellison," she called, "you can turn around, or you can stay and meet 1,000 small resistances that look like hospitality until you exhaust your hunger. We will not fight your way, you'd win that story. We will fight ours." The captain's smile thinned. "You may find," she said, "that law favors competence." "Law favors witnesses," Tara said, "and we have them." At her gesture, the chime grove woke. Hoops strummed themselves, tuned to rising wind. Elders hummed. Human children, roused from warm blankets, reached for their teachers' hands and kept quiet with a ferociousness that would have made a general weep. The air itself seemed to lean in. And then came the one thing the mining captain had not planned for, an invasion of affection. From the southern dens, as if on a signal agreed upon years ago for an emergency everyone had hoped would never come, the cubs poured out. They came like a tide made of whiskers and sleep and clumsy paws, dozens, then hundreds, bands of striped bodies flowing around elders, around human boots, down the slope toward the flats. Their keepers, aunts, uncles, the patient old, walked with them, but they did not try to stop them. Cub logic is a kind of storm. You shepherd it, you don't end it. Huang swore on the channel. Hold positions, no sudden movements, let them pass. Tara didn't move at all. She watched the first wave reach the edge of the floodlights and slow as if struck by invisible hands. They fanned, sniffed, sighted. Their ears flattened at the scent of hot metal, strange grease, old violence. The nearest machine, a skidder printer, beeped a warning and pivoted its little guns to track the baby's heat signatures. A human loader cursed and stomped to shoo them, hands out, trying to look big. The lead cub, heavy stripe over one eye, hope shaped like mischief, ignored him and leapt onto the skidder's track. It went very still and then luxuriously limp, the way cubs do when the world gives them a warm surface. It purred. The purr found the printer's chassis and comforted it in exactly the wrong way. The machine thought the vibration was a mechanic's coded tap and unlocked a panel. 2 more cubs wriggled in. The loader squeaked and waved his hands harder. The aide raised his pistol reflexively, an idiot gesture even on his own terms. Huang's voice went low, lethal. "Don't you dare." The aide hesitated. He saw elders in the floodlight beyond the cubs. He saw humans on the ridge, still and watching. He saw 1,000 witnesses. He lowered the gun. The cub tide rolled on. They surrounded the command van and lay down in a furry ring, tails touching. Others climbed the earth mover's treads, rolled over in the dust, and showed their bellies to the cold metal like the world's most manipulative peace offering. A group found the anchor cables for the drones and gnawed them with the same attention they gave to hoopshime laces. An elder stationed near the youngest flicked its ear at a too curious paw, gently setting rules. The adults hummed around the perimeters, notes that meant safe, not prey, be soft. Humans from the city came down with bowls and set them near the carriers. Warm roots steamed in the night. The captain stared. She had misjudged the place. The manual had not included a chapter on soft sieges. She looked to the guns and then to the cameras. Every drone lit red now where a cub had chewed through a cable, and did the risk calculation again. She pasted the smile back on. "All right," she said through the megaphone. "Cute. You've made your point. We're not here to hurt anyone, animal or otherwise, but we are here. We have a charter. You can't." Her voice cut as the ground under her thrummed. The crystals, those veins she had come to steal, sang, not loud, just enough to make the air tremble in every lung. The elder beside Tara added a line. Other elders answered up and down the terraces, folding the world into a chorus you could not stand against without either crying or laughing or both. Kyan came up at a run, panting, eyes bright. "Doc," he said between breaths. "Northridge anchored. Pulses clean. Malin's team is on their flank just out of floodlight range. And someone roasted a whole pan of roots. We're handing them out to the cubs and to the miners, anyone who looks cold." "Good," Tara said, "because hospitality is a calculus. Keep them fed." Huang's channel crackled. "Their drones are going high. They want Overwatch footage. We can't block them without giving them what they are after." "Let them film," Tara said. "Let the galaxy watch us refuse to hate." The captain put the megaphone down. Her aide followed her close, eyes bright with fear or admiration. Sometimes those are cousins. She walked toward the ridge slowly, as if expecting a trap built of ands instead of oars. The cubs around the command van lifted their heads to watch her go, then decided simultaneously she wasn't interesting and put their faces back on their paws. The elder at Tara's side stepped forward, not blocking, not yielding, co-equal movement. The captain stopped 3 paces away from Tara and the elder. Up close, her clean jacket wasn't clean. Dust had opinions and expressed them honestly along the hem. "This is very pretty," she said, quietly now that the megaphone wasn't turning breath into threat. "And I'll admit it, it's clever." She flicked a finger toward the cubs. "But I've stood over bodies in places where clever and pretty got people killed. I am not your enemy. I am also not your friend. I'm a lever attached to a fulcrum you don't control." Tara nodded. "I know what levers do." She put her hand on the elder's shoulder. I also know what weight does. The elder tapped the stone with the bracket line. The captain flinched. The sound got into your blood if you had any sense of rhythm left in you, and then relaxed, embarrassed human. You speak, she said to the elder, which was both true and not. It hummed. She heard it. She didn't understand, not yet. We have medicine, Tara said. We have heaters. We have food that tastes like the good part of being a child. Sit, eat, talk. Tomorrow you can turn around and tell your bosses that the vein's not only a resource, it is a body. You will have proof, recordings, meals, witnesses. You can say the words no one in your line of work likes saying and survive because your heart remembered how. The captain swallowed. Her eyes flickered to the command van, to the neutral lights of waiting systems, to the signing panel where her driver stared, unsure of what orders meant when the ground under them hummed with a note that braided law into music. She was not the kind who enjoyed pain. She was the kind who endured it, and something in her posture said she was tired of being the lever. 28 hours, she said softly, as if reciting a spell she didn't believe had power anymore. We promised. Fast in, fast out. Face saving. The company feeds on that. Tara smiled without cruelty. Then eat this instead. A cub stumbled over the captain's boot and headbutted her shin. Reflex, she bent and scratched between its ears. It collapsed bonelessly onto her foot and purred. The captain stared at her treacherous hand, which had chosen for her in the ancient way. Fine, she said, too quickly for pride, just right for sanity. I'll talk, but if the envoy won't protect you, I can't, you know that. We protect each other, Tara said simply. They sat. Roots passed. Water poured. Someone brought a pot of savory stew and set it carefully where cubs couldn't scald themselves. The captain ate like someone whose body had been waiting for permission. The aide ate even faster. A drone buzzed down and landed like a curious insect. A cub sat on it with clear intent, and the patient drone accepted its new purpose. The night stretched and did not break. Dawn rose pink and gold and unapologetic. The envoy's ship cut the sky fast, firing its case to burn time. When it settled on the far flats, its pilots took too long getting the ramp down because half the crew had come without orders and would have run barefoot if the drop had been further. The envoy himself came down with hair wild in the breeze and eyes that had seen too many days of law and too few of mercy. He looked at the captain across the Cub Sea and winced like a man whose knee had been held straight too long, now asked to bend. Captain Ellison, he said, your permits are out of date and in dispute. Your writ is provisional at best, fraudulent at worst. He looked at Tara and then at the elder and bowed, not human deep, Ishi shallow, forehead tilting a bare degree. Dr. Rahman, I should have been faster. You were fast enough, Tara said, both truth and comfort. The envoy looked around. What happens if I declare this zone protected under the Intercold Accords biodiversity rider? The captain snorted. We challenge it. You lose in arbitration but win on ethos. My bosses decide this costs more than they thought. They slink away and try to buy the administrator again. Also, I get reprimanded because I ate stew with a rebel. You ate stew with a neighbor, Tara said gently. The envoy nodded. Then let's make this officially a very expensive neighborhood. He looked at his attaché. Draft it, full designation with live broadcast, and ping every reporter who thought this assignment was boring. The attaché was already typing. On it. Captain, if your bosses want to contest, they can do it in front of an audience now. The captain stood, wiped dust from her jacket because habit is stubborn even when heart has shifted. She looked at Tara, then at the elder. I didn't come here to be a villain, she said. Then don't leave as one, Tara replied. The captain turned to her convoy and raised her hand. Pack it, she said. Slow, no damage. She hesitated. Leave the med crate. I saw a cub limping from the north dens. Might be a thorn, not a treaty clause, a kindness clause. The larger document holds if the small ones do. The minors obeyed. Some grumbled because grumbling is how fear hides its neck. Others, new hires with hands still soft, looked relieved enough to loosen the screws on their own anger. A loader crouched beside the drone a cub had claimed and scratched his head, gentle. The aide leaned toward Tara and whispered, "It's the weight, right? You pick it up. You don't drop it, that's the trick." "It's the whole trick," Tara said. They stayed until evening because departures need time to become real. Then the convoy walked back the way it had come, slow, cubs escorting it like rude saints. The envoy signed the rider. The attaché made it sing through channels. The world took a little longer to quit holding its breath. When the night was fully theirs again, when the chimes had changed key to celebrate, and the elders had called the cubs home with a sequence that meant story time now, Tara finally sat on the terrace and let the tremble into her hands that she hadn't allowed earlier. The elder pressed its forehead to hers and hummed until the tremble smoothed. No one spoke for a while because the body prefers silence after a day of being useful. Kyan came with a mug of something hot and sweet. "I kept thinking," he said, sitting carefully because respect, "that there's always going to be another convoy, another captain, another argument. Don't you ever get tired of making the case again?" Tara looked toward the cave where, years ago, she had learned the shape of her future without knowing she was reading. She thought of the day she had written the first clause on a ridge of rock, and the way an elder's paw had tapped acceptance beside her knuckles. She thought of all the times anger would have been easier, and all the times it would have broken something she loved. "I get tired," she said, "but I'm less tired than I would be if I pretended endurance isn't my job." The elder tapped the stone with "too short, one long, too short," then added a flourish that translated to a word humans used for home. Tara tapped it back. Kyan tried and almost got it. The elder purred like approval. From the dens, the cubs' chatter rose bright, irreverent, one voice many. An elder began a story about a cave and a storm and a human who had not moved because she could not and because she would not. Tara stood, mostly to keep from crying in front of a boy who thought she was made of equations. She looked at the half-raised scaffold and felt the tug of work. "We need to lift," she said. Kyan groaned. "Now." "The wind's right," she said, smiling. "It owes us a favor." They went. The elder came too, not to protect, not to supervise, only to be. The winch line creaked. The rods rose like the bones of a new instrument. When they settled into their sockets, the scaffolding sang a low, contented chord. Kyan whooped, half from joy and half from terror that it might fall. It didn't. The wind took the chord and braided it into the larger music of a city that understood at last how to be many without odium. Night deepened. Stars presented themselves like arguments too beautiful to be answered. The envoy's ship pulsed quietly on the far flats as a deterrent with humility. The mining convoy left a trail of dust that would be gone by morning. Tara sat with her back against the scaffold's guts and let the world continue without her for a breath. The elder curled beside her and put its head on her thigh, an honor a queen might envy if she were very wise. "When I first came here," she told it softly, "I thought my work was to prove you were people." It blinked. Its light rose and fell in slow acceptance of a confession. "I was wrong," she said. "My work is to prove we are." The elder touched its nose to her knuckles. Then it yawned a cavern yawn and closed its eyes. Its weight, a long comfort, pinned her the way years ago 10 cubs had pinned her in a cave. She could not move. She did not need to. She slept. The scaffold hummed. The city's lights dimmed in a rhythm agreed upon by humans and elders, both so crystals would rest. Far off on an orbit that would bring them trouble in another season, a ship pivoted and watched and decided, this time, to keep going because sometimes trouble can read a skyline and chooses to be a different problem on a different world. In the morning, the wind came from the east. It tasted of root blossoms and new iron. The cubs woke hungry and loud. Kyan snored on his feet and pretended he hadn't. The envoy drank something black and looked almost happy. The attaché wrote 4 lines of law that even a villain could respect. Malin and Huang finally sat down and unlaced boots and talked about thigh bruises like metals that don't rot a soul. The elder who slept on Tara's lap lifted its head and sneezed delicately because a chime whisper tickled its nose. A runner arrived from the far terraces with a message tapped along the crystalline underways. A flood up north had washed out a hoop grove and stranded a dozen cubs on an island of root mat in the middle of the river. Hungry flyers circled. The water rose fat with silt, fast with arrogance. Tara stood without complaint. "Let's go get our neighbors," she said. They ran, not headlong, not foolish, not slow. The elder loped beside them, not young but not yet tired of long miles. The river at the north bend had turned ugly, brown muscle flexing into jagged curves, froth where rocks tried to say no to physics. In the center, the mat held. Crouched and scared, the cubs chirred pain and confusion. Above, 3 flyers wheeled, membrane wings, hooked feet, eyes like old coins that had learned to count. "Grapnels," Huang said. "We anchor upstream and pull a line across. We'll need to tempt the mat toward the shallow eddy." "Not in time," Malin said. "Those flyers will break formation as soon as we move." The elder slid into the water like a promise and stood braced against current, head high, humming a note the cubs answered with shaky relief. It looked back. "Ready?" "Ready," Tara called. She tied one end of a line around her waist and the other around a boulder and stepped into the river. It lifted her by the thighs, cold and strong, and tried to make her a story about caution. She cut it off mid-sentence with her feet and hands. Kyan followed with a second line wrapped around his shoulders like a sash. Malin and 2 elders took positions downstream with poles. Huang aimed a coil pistol at the flyers and set it to crack air. Loud, not lethal. 3 breaths, Tara called. "On my tap." She felt the rivers count. 1, 2, 3. A heavy beat disguised as movement. She tapped the rock with 2 short, 1 long, 2 short. The elders tapped back. Huang fired into the sky. The flyers shrieked and flared, eyes blinking against the sudden pressure wave. Malin shoved the poles into the water and leaned her whole life into it. Tara pulled. The current bit her thighs and tried to chew, then let go a fraction. The mat drifted toward the eddy. The cubs cried, piled, cried again. 2 slipped. The elder lunged, chin deep, and nudged them back with a blowthread of patience. Kyan lost his footing and went under, line jerking. Tara anchored and pulled until the world had room for one more breath. He came up coughing and furious at his own lungs. "Fine," he spat. "Fine, I'm fine." He was not fine, he kept going. The flyers came back, wiser than bullets and exactly as brave. Huang cracked the air again, this time at a lower pitch that hurt ears and respect but not bodies. The flyers swore in their own language and found wind elsewhere. The mat slid into the eddy. Malin and an elder hooked it and turned it with the gentleness of a surgeon given a patient he cannot bear to lose. The cubs leapt into the shallows in a wild gray and violet spill. One sprinted up the bank and collapsed directly onto Tara's feet because traditions matter. She laughed breathless and bent and picked it up like a sack of gold that purrs. Behind her, Kyan coughed up river and grinned like a fool who'd found the thing he would do for the rest of his life and call it a job. They counted noses. They missed one and then found it under another, embarrassed to be discovered. They counts again. The elder touched noses to each cub. Its light rose and steadied. It made a pattern in the mud with its claw, loop, line, ring, safe now. They walked home wet and streaming and unbothered by the dark line of a mining convoy long gone. The city's chimes welcomed them with a phrase someone had written last year that meant the same thing in 3 tongues. "You came back." The envoy held up 2 units of self-heating stew like a penitent. The attaché tried to hand Kyan a towel and dropped it because his fingers wouldn't stop shaking either. When the sun struck the scaffold, it sang a high, clear greeting. The cub Tara carried fell asleep mid-purr. She laid it on warm stone near other sleepers and stepped back as the elder laid its own body between cubs and wind. The long, slow acceptance of a creature that had never in its life been afraid of weight. Night again. A different blue. The ridge glittered. The treaty rider circulated in feeds so far away the light from those places had already then not yet reached Aesh's caves when the first clause was written. People argued. They always would. A few listened until they were changed. Some hated with enough gentleness to be forgiven later. Tara sat alone at the mouth of the cave where once the storm had pinned her and listened to the wind speak to old rock. She remembered her mother's doorway and the way her voice had decided what the world might be. Don't let them teach you what to love. Love first. Learn later. She had done that. She would keep doing it until her body ran out of days the way rivers sometimes run out of anger. The elder found her, of course. It always did. It nudged her hand and lay down so its warm flank pressed her calf. She rested her palm on its shoulder, feeling the light under skin rise and fall like surf on a good shore. A cub wandered in its sleep and bumped her boot, then returned to its heap as if guided by magic. She smiled into the dark. Somewhere out beyond, the mining captain spoke to a camera and told the truth, that she had come to steal and left with a different kind of wealth. Somewhere else, a child in the settlement woke from a dream of drowning and found in their small palm the memory of a line tied tight to a rock. Somewhere farther still, a committee sighed and revised a law not because it made money, but because it made sense and would save them from ever having to watch again as people were turned into obstacles to be negotiated around. Tomorrow would be work and more work. The scaffold would need new dampers. The grove would need retuning. The envoy would need prodding and praise in equal and careful measure. Cub teeth would find the wrong bootlaces. Flyers would test boundaries. Someone would say something cruel in a moment of fear and then take it back in a moment of courage. Weight would sit on Tara's chest in the night and she would breathe until it remembered it was only responsibility, not doom. This was the shape of days now. It was not easy. It was holy. She lay down on the moss and because the body remembers what it owes, slept. Through the night, small weights climbed and settled. When she woke before dawn, she could not move. She laughed softly into her sleeve and did not try to fight what loved her. She watched light carve the cave mouth and listened to the first chime of the day. She thought about the sentence she would repeat until it wore grooves into the arguments of the people who would still come with charters and hungry, smiling faces. Then she thought about nothing at all and just breathed in a place that wanted her here. When she rose without fanfare and went to keep a promise. To lift, to feed, to argue kindly, to scratch a cub behind the ear until it went boneless with joy. To listen when a law tried to turn itself into a weapon and sing until it turned into a fence instead. To love first and learn later and never stop doing either. The elder walked with her, and the city that hated the word woke around them like a chorus, holding one long, reliable note until the world remembered what it meant. And that day, the galaxy learned humanity doesn't conquer, it endures. Headphone, thank you for listening. Until next time, stay human, stay unbroken.